we're back. Getting Sober Young is officially in the mix. We're here to be the resource to break the stigma, whatever that stigma is. I mean, what's the stigma about? Is it about sobriety? Is it about getting sober young is not possible, extremely difficult, this or that? Or, I mean, there's a ton of stigmas out there between addiction, alcoholism, trying to change your life at such a young age, or really at any age, especially when you're talking about addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in treatment for a while now, and I think regardless of if the person is like young or old, the excuses remain the same. They just might be phrased a tad bit differently, but and I also think that like breaking the stigma of like how the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is like supposed to be worked or supposed to look like, where if you're a newcomer or if you're been around for a few years or even a couple decades, if you make it that far. But yeah, man, just to provide our own experience, strength, and hope with what has brought us to this point in life where we are, happy, joyous, and free to the extent that we are, and have the ability to live successful lives and, be productive members of our communities,
Yeah, and I think too, with when we say Alcoholics Anonymous, I imagine that there is a ton of opportunity just to immediately get turned off by that. So when we talk about our experience, a lot of our experience has to do with AA, HA, the 12 steps as a whole, because that's what John and I were approached with to get sober, to maintain sobriety, and ultimately to integrate back into our lives in a healthy way. But that is not at all what our experience is limited to. I mean, we have a lot of experience now. John is in therapy for the last
probably year.
Damn,
yeah.
Really? I feel like you just got into therapy.
I got into therapy when I either soon before or soon after I started working out, and that was over a year ago. That was last summer.
Physical and mental strength. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we say AA, yes, a lot of our experience, especially in early sobriety, is centered around that because that's all we knew and that's all we could afford.
Sobriety.
Yeah, therapy wasn't necessarily in the budget back then. But we also really weren't woken up to a whole lot of things other than that. Now, has that changed as we've stayed sober, gotten older, and dipped our toes into all of these other avenues of, let's say, wellness? Is that a good word to use? That's probably a good word to use.
I think wellness is it's a perfect word to use in this context.
Yeah, I would say so. So whether that's like certain meditation, whether that's socializing, reintegrating back into a community, building better habits, learning how to take care of yourself, AA, obviously, the 12 steps, therapy, trauma therapy, what else? I mean, there's so many avenues that we've explored just to reintegrate back into life, which doesn't sound, I'm not trying to sound so negative in that we were just desocialized. Is that a word? Desocialized? Not socialized, or, even in sobriety, having that quality of life was still there for a number of years and still is, but a lot of it was centered around the 12 steps in the beginning. And I think as we've stayed sober, we've been able to explore other avenues of, wellness and exploration, and not in the sense of, I wouldn't say exploration in the sense of a necessity. I just think as you get older and as you go through life, that exploration naturally happens, because as we evolve, our lifestyle evolves, our problems evolve, life starts hitting us with X, Y, or Z. And, a lot of the times maybe it's new to us, even if we feel like it's one of the similar situations. Because one of the things with me was like, if something happened once and then twice and then 3 times and then 4 times, well, by that 4th time, it's a totally different experience because I've experienced 3 times already. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, some of the times when shit happens again, I'm like, why the fuck is this still happening? And why haven't I gotten better from this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, like in regards to therapy, I'd done AA alone for 8 years, and then my quality of life was pretty good, I would say. From day to day, I would be able to function like a person. And then I got involved in therapy, and I realized I had a bunch of underlying issues that didn't necessarily pertain to Alcoholics Anonymous that were affecting me in my day-to-days, and I wasn't aware as to how it was affecting me in my day-to-days. And I get involved in therapy, and it was a lot like being a newcomer again, because I was like the exploration of like my of like what's going on in my head or in my internal condition and all these different things. And I was able to start drawing lines to actions and behaviors that I have been exhibiting repeatedly, but was never really able to understand the reason as to why I was displaying these behaviors repeatedly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get taken down a path. When you get into any kind of recovery program and you get something that's called a sponsor, you got a regular fucking dude who is going to ask you some pretty serious questions and have you do some pretty serious things. Pen and paper, internal, exploration. And for me, whenever I got into AA and did the 12 steps, that was the first time ever I have ever looked at myself. It's like my whole life prior to recovery was blame you. This is bad. Even if I know I'm the culprit, it's like, okay, well, even if I am the maker of all of this destruction, you should still understand and follow my demands, which is usually leave me the fuck alone. So whenever getting into recovery, it was like, hey, let's write down these resentments, which I didn't even know what the word resentment meant. I don't know if that's how young I was or how stupid I was or a combination of the both. I didn't even know what resentment meant. But, it was the first time that I had ever gotten stuff down where I was in like a healthy environment and able to process some stuff. But then on the flip side of that, see what I could have done differently. Because if you tell me to bitch at something, oh yeah, all day. But then you tell me to bitch at something and then figure out why I'm bitching at something and then change that. Okay, that was different. So similar to the therapy, it took me down another path of looking in my internal makeup as to why I react this way, especially so severely. Like 0 to 100. And I'm like, and I didn't think it was as big of a deal as it was. But as my therapist like took me down that path of, tracking shit down and being able to see how stuff still shows up today, and then obviously taking some proper action, with today's situations to counteract those other beliefs and start having different thought patterns. Start finding what I call it is the evidence that I will be okay. And it's not that fucking easy. Oh, just do this and you'll be okay. But the issue with me was, I'd be in a situation that was extremely uncomfortable, which from the outside looking in does not seem like a big deal at all. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's like, okay, here's this shit, right? It's all flared up, and so I need to find that in that moment, it is not what I think it is, because what I think it is mega, and that's why I'm flipping out. That's why I'm so heated. That's why I'm so confused. But with that internal exploration, with that intentional action, with being willing to, see if my thoughts are right or not, it takes a lot of courage, of course, and it's also not an overnight matter, which I know that's what people in recovery say a lot, but it's true. Like I need to practice multiple times, being in a place of uncomfortability, doing what I was shown to do, or whatever that productive action is, and then assessing my situation after that.